Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys are all doing super well. So welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Melissa Lucio and Mariah Alvarez. I had actually never heard about this case until Kim Kardashian tweeted about it. There's also a documentary about this case on Hulu called The State of Texas vs. Melissa. I will have that link down below in case you guys want to check it out. The majority of information I got about this case was through the court document, so I will have that link down below if you guys want to read it. There's one that's like 55 pages and there's another that's like 150 or something like that, so they're pretty long, but if you do want to get some more information before you make, a final decision at the end of this video, I would recommend you guys go check those out. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Thank you guys so much for being here and listening to today's case. I really appreciate it. And if you guys are new here, welcome, bienvenidos. I hope you guys will be able to join the familia and hit the subscribe button down below. Alright, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Let's jump right into today's video. So Melissa Elizabeth Lucio was born on July 18th, 1968. Her father wasn't really around, so Melissa lived with her mother Esperanza and the rest of her siblings. They experienced a very rough and poor life. When Melissa was just 6 years old, she began to be sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend at the time. She felt so hurt and unloved because of this, but she didn't tell her mom right away. Then other family members also began to sexually abuse Melissa. She says she allowed herself to be a victim over and over again. Eventually, when she was a little bit older, she told her mom about the abuse and her mom didn't believe her. Esperanza told her to be quiet, to never say things like that again, and that she didn't believe her because she was just a little girl when it happened. Of course, Melissa was crushed by this. She already endured something so traumatizing and so horrific for so many years. And then to finally get the courage to tell your mother what happened and have her not believe you, it's just a horrible feeling. And I just feel really bad for Melissa because in that moment, she needed her mother's support. She needed her mother to believe her. So Melissa definitely had a very rough childhood. And when she was 16 years old, she actually dropped out of high school and decided to get married. She says she made this decision because she wanted to escape her childhood. She wanted to escape the abuse. She wanted to escape the trauma and just start a new, fresh life. Unfortunately, the man she married was not a good one. According to her lawyers, the husband would R-word her, beat her, and choke her. The relationship was very traumatizing and violent, and after Melissa had given birth to 5 children, this husband abandoned Melissa and the children. It is sad how she got married at such a young age. 16 years old. That is just insane to me, but her reasoning behind it was to have a fresh life where, she would escape her abuse, but in the end, she ended up enduring even more violence and trauma. So a few months after the divorce, Melissa met a man named Robert Alvarez. He allegedly was also violent and abusive towards Melissa, but in the end, they ended up getting married and moved into an apartment in Harlingen, South Texas. They ended up having 6 children together, so in total, Melissa had 11 kids. Now, 11 kids is a lot. That's a lot to handle and it's very expensive. That's a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of clothes to buy, and it's just very difficult to manage all of that. I believe Melissa was a janitor at the time and I'm not sure what Robert was doing, but the family was financially struggling. The first time that CPS, which is Child Protective Services, got involved with the family was in 1995. This is when the agency charged Melissa with neglectful supervision, but they didn't take any action such as removing the children from the home. Then, between 1999 and 2000, CPS learned that when Melissa gave birth to one of her sons, both her and the baby tested positive for cocaine. Some of the older kids did tell CPS that their parents were abusing drugs, but for some reason, CPS decided not to investigate this and they left the children in the home. Melissa's siblings also confirm her drug habit. They say that she was addicted to cocaine and weed, and I believe those were the only drugs that she would do, but she would do them pretty much every single day. They say she would lock herself in the bathroom, do the drugs, and she wouldn't come out until hours later just to make sure her kids didn't see her doing the drugs and, didn't see her high from them. One of her brothers said that the children would be knocking on the bathroom door asking for their mom, but Melissa wouldn't open up until she felt ready. According to the CPS report, Melissa and her husband were receiving between $2,000 and $5,000 in welfare benefits a month, but would spend the majority of this money on drugs, not on the children. At one point, the family was homeless and was often seen sleeping in a park near Zavala Elementary School. The children would have to rely on school for their food and hygiene necessities. CPS felt that Melissa was a negligent mother, and they always came because of negligence, not because there were reports of physical abuse towards the children. So then on September 6, 2004, Melissa's 12th child, Mariah Elizabeth Alvarez, was born. The family was still living in poverty and her parents continued to struggle with a drug addiction. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment that was located on the 2nd floor. Their apartment was pretty run down, and in order to get to their unit, you had to climb up a set of pretty dangerous and steep stairs. The apartment was pretty run down, but Melissa and her husband did have plans to move to a new apartment. The new apartment was way nicer and safer for the kids, and it was only just a few blocks away from where they were living now. However, before they could move, Mariah and the rest of the children were removed from the home after Melissa tested positive for cocaine. All of the kids were sent into foster care while Melissa and her husband tried to, sober up, get themselves together, and get clean for the children. This was literally right after Mariah was born. Literally 3 weeks after she was born, she was removed from her family, and for the next 2 years, she would be in foster care. So a few weeks go by since all of the children were removed, and on September 21st, 2004, a CPS specialist made a second home visit to Melissa's apartment to address the allegations about negligence. When he got there, he says that the home was found to be unsafe for children. There were ants crawling all over the floor and on the mattress where Mariah would sleep. He also found a fan in the window that had no cover, which left the blades exposed and, of course, a danger to children. When he looked inside the refrigerator, all he found was a rotten head of lettuce, a carton of eggs, and a plastic container of mayonnaise. The refrigerator also had a very bad odor to it. It smelled of spoiled food. Then inside the pantry, there was just one small can of corn, a box of salt, sauce, a small box of infant mixed cereal, and empty condiment containers. He also noted that there was a strong odor of urine throughout the house. After he checked on the house, he decided to go check on the children and see what their condition was like. He noted that one of the children, who was 4 years old, had a dime-sized bruise on his stomach and an old scratch on his head, which reportedly came from an injury he sustained from falling off the bed. Then another child, who was 3 years old, had a bite mark the size of 2 quarters on his left shoulder, multiple scratches on his face, and multiple insect bites on his arms and legs. Then a 2-year-old had a 1-inch linear scab on the top of her head and multiple insect bites on her back, arms, and legs. Her body was very dirty, and she also had dried feces on her. This CPS specialist said that the children seemed to be very dirty, their hair was matted, their bodies had a very strong odor, and that they just didn't look healthy overall. So after the CPS specialist examined the house and examined the children, he deemed that the children would remain in foster care and not be returned to Melissa or Robert. It wasn't until 2 years later, on November 21st, 2006, that CPS returned Mariah and 8 of the children back to Melissa and Robert. I believe they did conduct a drug test on Melissa, and she came back as negative and said that the last time she did drugs was in February of that year. So then a couple of months go by since the children were returned to the home, and at this point, Melissa and the family were getting ready to move into their new apartment just a couple of blocks away. On Thursday, February 15, 2007, Melissa was busy getting ready for the move. She was packing clothes, she was cleaning the kitchen, just getting everything ready. Her husband, Robert, had taken some of the older children to go with him to drop off some of the things at the new apartment, and before he left, he told the younger children that stayed back to just play inside the apartment while Melissa was cleaning and to not go outside. However, after he drove off, the kids began to wander outside. They began to make their way down the steps to go play in the yard. As I mentioned earlier, these steps were pretty steep, so when 2-year-old Mariah decided to head down the stairs, she accidentally fell and landed all the way at the bottom of the steps. She immediately began to cry, and Melissa came running out to check on her. She says that Mariah seemed mostly uninjured by the fall, and after a while, she went back to playing with her siblings like nothing had happened. However, over the next 48 hours, Mariah would begin to show signs that proved she had actually been severely injured from this fall. For example, the family had some tamales for dinner that night, and Mariah couldn't keep them down and she threw them up. The following morning, on Friday, February 16th, Mariah had some Choco Crispies for breakfast and she was able to keep them down, but throughout the day, she ended up losing her appetite. Anytime Melissa would try to give her food, Mariah would grit her teeth together and not want to eat. Then on Saturday, February 17th, 2 days after Mariah's fall, all she had to eat that day was juice. She didn't want to eat any solid food, she could barely keep the juice down, and she was just very tired. Throughout the morning, Mariah appeared to be having some breathing issues, but Melissa thought this was due to a cold, so she didn't take her to the doctor. At this point, the family was already living in their new apartment, and they had set up a mattress in one of the bedrooms where Mariah would sleep. Melissa decided to put Mariah on this mattress and let her take a nap. Unfortunately, Mariah would never wake up from her nap. At around 7 p.m. that day, the family called 911 after they found Mariah unresponsive. One of the paramedics arrived to the scene and said that when they first entered the apartment, they found Mariah unattended and lying on her back in the middle of the floor, not breathing and with no pulse. He noticed that Melissa was acting very distant and that her behavior was so out of the ordinary for a mother in this type of situation that he actually had to make a note of it in his report. So once the paramedics arrived, they tried to resuscitate Mariah, but unfortunately were unable to. They rushed her to the emergency room, and when they cut off her clothes, they were shocked by what they saw. Mariah had multiple bruises covering her body, bite marks on her back. One of her arms had been broken, most likely about 2 to 7 weeks before her death, and she was missing portions of her hair that had been pulled out by the roots. One of the emergency room doctors said it was the absolute worst thing he had ever seen. After they saw the bruises on Mariah's body, they decided to call 911, and police took Melissa straight from the hospital right to the police station. The police began their interrogation with Melissa at around 10 p.m. that night. They put her in this very tiny, cramped room and began to question her about the death of her daughter. These detectives were pretty aggressive with Melissa and kept demanding her to tell the truth and admit to abusing her daughter. I will try to include clips of this interrogation here, but if I'm not able to, I will link it down below in case you guys want to watch it. I do want to warn you that for a brief moment in this interrogation, police show Melissa photos of Mariah's body covered in bruises, and it's pretty uncomfortable to watch. Something to note is that Melissa was pregnant with twins during this time. She was in shock from the death of her daughter Mariah, and she also didn't have an attorney present throughout the entire interrogation. So throughout the interrogation, the cops tell Melissa that they know what she did and that she needs to just tell the truth and confess.
This is your chance to set it straight, because right now it looks like capital murder. Right now it looks like you're a cold-blooded killer. Now, are you a cold-blooded killer?
No, I'm not.
Or were you a frustrated mother who just took it out on her? Melissa, look at me. It happens. Okay? We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all get upset. We already know what happened.
Melissa kept saying that she did not abuse her daughter, but after 3 hours of interrogation with no water or bathroom breaks, Melissa admitted to spanking and biting Mariah, but denied causing her fatal injury.
Something you want to add?
This part wasn't included in the documentary, but according to court documents, during this interrogation, Melissa said that she would sometimes pinch Mariah's private parts and grab and squeeze her arms. She also said she did bite Mariah twice on the back at different times about 2 weeks before her death. I'm not saying that this is 100% true. All I'm saying is that this is what was stated in the court documents. In the Hulu documentary, Melissa says that she only admitted to abusing Mariah because she wanted the officers to end the interrogation. Melissa did agree to take a polygraph test, and police took samples of her hair, fingernails, and they did a DNA mouth swab, but none of these samples were ever tested. Then, finally, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the interrogation ended. An autopsy was conducted on Mariah by Dr. Farley, and she concluded that Mariah's cause of death was blunt force head trauma, which could have occurred within 24 hours prior to her death. She said that Mariah suffered multiple contusions to her head and that these injuries could not have been caused by falling down some stairs. She says it was the most severe case of child abuse that she had ever seen. While police tried to determine what happened, they decided to interview some of Melissa's children to see if they were also abused or if they witnessed any abuse towards Mariah. One of her kids said that he saw Mariah fall down the stairs and that he didn't know Mariah had any previous bruises. The only time he saw a bruise on her was when she fell down the steps and got a bruise on her eye and arm. Eventually, the children were separated and sent into foster care once again. So, after conducting their investigation, on February 18, 2007, Melissa Lucio was arrested by the Harlingen Police Department. She was indicted on May 16th and arraigned on May 31st. She was in jail for 3 months before her attorney, Peter Gilman, was appointed to her case. Also, she ended up giving birth to the twins in jail, and she had to give them up for adoption. So Peter Gilman told Melissa that she should plead guilty and accept a sentence of 30 years, which was an offer that the district attorney made. However, she said no. She said she didn't want to admit to being guilty, she didn't want to admit to causing the death of her daughter, and she just didn't want to lie and admit to something that she didn't do. She thought that at least one person on that jury would believe her and that in the end, she would be found innocent. So in 2008, Melissa's trial began at the Cameron County Courthouse in downtown Brownsville, Texas. The district attorney leading this case was a man named Armando Villalobos. He apparently urged the jury to ignore the claims about Mariah's death being caused from a fall down the stairs and wanted them to focus on Mariah's autopsy and the testimony from Dr. Farley. To combat this, Melissa's defense team presented testimony from a medical expert named Curry, who said that Mariah's fatal injuries could have actually been caused from falling down the stairs. Her defense team even said, "I told you my client is not up for Mother of the Year. I told you that my client is guilty of injury to a child. She is, and she has admitted that." The question here before you is whether or not on February 17, 2007, Melissa Lucio intentionally and knowingly killed Mariah Alvarez. That's the issue. Not whether she beat her, not whether she broke her arm. Her defense team basically wanted the jury to understand, yes, Melissa admitted to causing bruises to Mariah, but she didn't admit to killing her and causing the fatal blow. And a lot of people honestly question Melissa's defense team. Some people believe that they didn't do a good job and they didn't help Melissa have a fair trial. They never once put Melissa on the stand. They never once put her children on the stand to talk about how she wasn't abusive and that they never saw her abuse Mariah. They never once talked about Melissa's childhood, about how she was sexually abused as a child, how she endured so much violence with her past partners, and how all of these factors could have led Melissa to falsely confess. There was a lot of information that the defense team did not include during the trial, but Melissa trusted them and thought that she was going to be proven innocent in the end. However, on July 8, 2008, Melissa Lucio was convicted of capital murder in the death of her daughter Mariah, and 2 days later, she was sentenced to death. Melissa and her defense team tried to fight this and get her conviction overturned. They felt that she didn't receive a fair trial and that most of the state's narrative was based on flawed science. For example, the bite marks allegedly found on Mariah weren't really bite marks, and the head trauma she endured was most likely from the fall down the steps, not because someone hit her, not because someone abused her, not because someone pushed her against the wall. Melissa also argued that the statement she made to police was inaudible and that it shouldn't be used against her. However, a judge denied this because although it's a little bit difficult to hear, you can still understand what Melissa is saying and it's still deemed audible. But her defense team was not going to stop, and they continued to fight until 2019, a 3-judge panel of the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals overturned Melissa's conviction. They ruled that she was deprived of her constitutional right to present a meaningful defense. For a brief moment, they believed Melissa, but when the state of Texas appealed this decision, the court backtracked its ruling and said that Melissa's conviction had to be upheld. After this decision, the court set an execution date for Melissa. She is scheduled to die by lethal injection on April 27, 2022, which is less than 10 days away. In 2020, there was a documentary released on Hulu called The State of Texas vs. Melissa. When this was filmed, Melissa had already been on death row for 11 years. It's a pretty interesting documentary. You can hear statements from Melissa's family, from some of her children, and from some of the people involved in her trial. One of the narratives talked about in this documentary is how one of Melissa's children, named Alexandra, could possibly be the one responsible for Mariah's death. There was a segment where one of Melissa's sisters, named Sonia, talked about a conversation she had with other relatives in which Alexandra admitted to punching Mariah. She allegedly claims that she did this out of resentment for having to take care of Mariah while Melissa and her husband did drugs. They allegedly claim that Alexandra hated Mariah because she was from another dad, so she didn't see Mariah as her actual sister. Now, Melissa says that she did see Alexandra abuse Mariah, but that she decided to take the blame for this to protect her daughter. There are statements from family members that claim they saw Alexandra push Mariah's head into the ground and that she would be very mean towards her. Now, Alexandra is interviewed in this documentary, but she says she doesn't recall ever admitting to saying she hated Mariah or was mean to her. Melissa's attorney, Peter Gilman, says that he did know about these claims against Alexandra, but that he didn't want to ruin her life since she was a teenager at the time of the trial. So that's why he didn't tell the jury about these allegations. Again, we don't know if these allegations made against Alexandra are true. One of Melissa's kids, named Selena, actually has a TikTok account where she posts videos with Alexandra. In these videos, they both deny the allegations. They claim that a big chunk of their interview for the documentary was cut out and that the documentary isn't real.
Just coming in. I watched the documentary. Alex seems so genuine. Did you not like Mariah? The documentary is not real. I was just in a little piece of it, not my whole interview.
One thing I want to say about that, whenever we went to the documentary, I was there with Marie, and whenever Sabrina brought up the fact that she abused my sister, like that really made me mad because it made no sense. It came out of nowhere. I didn't know that people thought that because it simply wasn't true. The abuse was all from my mom, and the fact that they blamed it on my sisters, you know, that really made me mad. I don't like that. I don't like that people think that my sisters do that because they're not like that. You see, they have kids. They don't abuse their kids.
I remember it went from like, tell me a good memory about your mom. What do you miss about your mom? You were close to your mom. And then it went to like, you said this and that, or you told somebody this and that, or you pushed it down the stairs, you know? Things that they've heard from Melissa or things that they made up themselves probably.
Which I understand. A lot of times documentaries can be a little bit biased, so I get the perspective on that, but they both say that Alexandra did not abuse Mariah and that the only person that abused Mariah was their mother, Melissa.
Okay, I just got out of work and I am going to speak slowly and explain or clear up some stuff. So I've seen a handful of comments saying that I contradict myself about the abuse. So, timeline. Before my sister Mariah was born, and before CPS got involved, my mom was not abusive at all. She yelled at us all the time. My dad, stepdad, He also didn't hit us. They would put us in the corner as punishment or take away whatever we had. So, not abusive prior to my sister Mariah being born, prior to CPS. Once CPS got involved, my mom didn't have any kids in her custody for 2 years. After my mom got us back from foster care for the younger kids and from living here in San Antonio, me and Marie, when we were all back in the same household, that's when she became abusive. Not abusive to all of us. She started abusing only my sister Mariah, which her autopsy proves. There were bite marks on my sister. My mom had some rings that her mom had given her. When my sister passed away, she had the bruises of the ring marks from my mom indented in her, or bruises that match my mom's rings. So once again, prior to CPS being involved, my mom was not abusive. After she got custody back of the kids, that's when she started abusing my sister Mariah.
So now, in April of 2022, Melissa is still set to be executed on April 27th. On March 22nd of this year, her legal team filed a petition for clemency to the governor of Texas and to the Board of Pardons and Parole. Melissa's lawyers are hopeful that with this new evidence and with the public support, she will be granted an execution reprieve or her sentence will be commuted. Her lawyers also believe that the jurors never heard about the forensic evidence that could have explained that Mariah's injuries were actually caused by the fall. They also say Melissa wasn't allowed to present any evidence questioning the validity of her confession. She was actually a very loving mother who worked hard to be drug-free and regain custody of her children. This petition of clemency also states that 4 jurors from Melissa's trial have now stated that they have grave concerns about the evidence withheld from them during the trial. One of the jurors, named Johnny Galvan Jr., wrote an editorial claiming he was misled and pressured during the trial. He said he was wrong to succumb to peer pressure to change his vote from a life sentence to the death penalty. He also feels that there were so many other details about this case that went unmentioned to the jury. He says, "If I could take my vote back, I would." Even Kim Kardashian got involved and was asking people to rethink Melissa's case. She made this tweet about Melissa, which is actually how I found out about the case in the first place. Now, there was a lot of back and forth in her comments after she made this tweet. A lot of people were replying to her, saying that she was wrong for trying to save this guilty woman, while other people were saying Melissa was innocent and that Kim was doing a great thing by promoting her innocence and helping her. Since then, this tweet has been deleted. I'm not sure if it was because of all this back and forth and maybe Kim regretted tweeting it, but it's now gone. However, because of her, a lot of new eyes were brought to the case. A lot of people began to question the 5+ hours of interrogation that Melissa endured. During her trial, the judge didn't allow a psychologist to testify about why Melissa may have admitted to something she didn't do. This includes her history of sexual abuse as a child and enduring domestic violence as an adult. The detectives were pretty aggressive with Melissa, and some of the tactics that they did have been shown to wear people down and get them to falsely confess. Melissa's trial is also being questioned because the district attorney that led her case, Armando Villalobos, was actually convicted on a handful of corruption charges. 5 years after Melissa's trial ended, a jury found Armando guilty of accepting more than $100,000 in exchange for favorable acts of prosecutorial discretion. Now people believe that every single case Armando worked on should be re-examined. He was actually up for re-election, and his big, message during his campaign was that he was going to fight crime and not have any tolerance for it. So some people believe that he wanted to use Melissa's case to show people that he doesn't accept any type of crime and that he will protect the people and hold these criminals accountable. Because of this, a lot of people are questioning the validity of Melissa's trial and also question the true intentions of Armando. So the Innocence Project has now taken on Melissa's case, and they are now a part of her legal defense team. They have a whole page dedicated to Melissa on their website where you can read more about her case, the trial, and learn about any new updates. They also created a petition to stop the execution of Melissa. The goal is to reach 500,000 signatures, and at the time of filming this, they are currently a little over 200,000. If you're interested in signing this petition, I will link it down below. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't sign it. It's 100% up to you and what you believe is correct. Melissa is now 53 years old, and if she's executed, she'll be the first Latina woman executed by Texas. The board plans to vote on Melissa's clemency petition 2 days before her scheduled execution. From what I've read, some of Melissa's children believe that she's innocent and deserves to be free. Her oldest son, John Lucio, has been doing a lot of campaigns and rallies in support of his mother. He says, "She is an innocent woman. She is not guilty of the death of my baby sister." So while some of the children believe that their mother is innocent, others don't. As I mentioned earlier, one of Melissa's daughters, Selena, has a TikTok where she talks about her mom's case. She says that her mother wasn't abusive to all of them, but that she did abuse Mariah. She says that the 3 older siblings, including John, that claim their mother is innocent, didn't even live in the apartment when Mariah died. So they weren't even around to witness any abuse towards Mariah, so that's why she believes that they're saying her mother is innocent, because they never saw it firsthand. Now, even though she says her mother did abuse Mariah, she doesn't want her mother to be executed. She actually signed the petition to save her mother from execution because she doesn't believe in the death penalty, but she does believe her mother should be in prison. I just want to reiterate that if this petition does reach all the required signatures, this doesn't mean that Melissa will be free and will just be like out and about, roaming the earth. This just means that her execution will be stopped. At the end of the day, we need to remember that this beautiful baby Mariah was abused and she deserves justice. Whoever caused those bruises and caused those bite marks and all of the pain that she endured needs to be held accountable and punished for what they did. Mariah did not deserve this. She did not deserve to endure all of this pain and violence throughout her 2 years of life. 2 years of just violence and abuse and heartbreak, and it's just not fair. I really wish that someone had spoken up about Mariah's abuse. If you know of a child that is being abused, there is a hotline that you can call for help. It's the National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4-A-CHILD. I will also link some resources down below of where you can reach out to if you know of a child that's being abused. I honestly think that child abuse is one of the worst things possible, and I wish that every baby and child out there would receive so much love and affection and care. So it's just really hard to read about this case and read about what Mariah endured. So yeah, you guys, that's pretty much all the information I have for today's video. I always do my best to research this case thoroughly, but of course, if I miss something or if I accidentally got something wrong, I'm human, and of course I will own up to it. So if I did mention something wrong, of course, let me know nicely in the comments down below and I will correct it. All of my sources and where I got my information from will be in the description box down below. I will keep you guys posted on what happens. As I mentioned, the board of directors is going to make a decision 2 days before her execution date next week. So I will let you guys know what they decide on, but it's pretty crazy that her execution is literally less than 10 days away. All right, you guys, that's pretty much it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.